Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have a very, very special guest with us today. And before we introduce our guest, we want to introduce our co-host, Corinne French.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here today. The topic is one of my favorites.
Yes, it's a very I'm saying very a lot today. I should vary my words a little bit. So anyways, the topic is very relevant, especially with summer approaching and that sort of thing. A lot of students are going to be going into the workforce. But before we jump into that, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact has given hundreds of millions of dollars to school districts around the great state of Texas, over 190 districts so far, over $700 million, unrestricted funds, zero out of pocket to the district, and recurring revenue to the districts every year. So if your district needs more funding for anything, reach out to Ideal Impact. Okay, now for today's guest, we have Dr. McHazlett from Bay City ISD. How are you doing today, Dr. McHazlett?
I'm doing very well. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to share some of the things I think we're all passionate about today. And so thank you for the invite. Very much looking forward to it.
Yes, we're looking forward to it as well. Super excited about this. And before we jump into the conversation, for those listening in, could you share a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Actually, I come from Southwest Texas, which is near the Uvalde area. I know we've heard a lot about, unfortunately, in the news for a lot of reasons that are important to school safety, but that's the area that I came from. And so through my educational experience, enjoyed a lot of extracurricular activities in school, and that education became a natural pathway for me coming out of that region. And I mentioned the region for a reason. That is, coming out of that region, there's a lot of poverty in where I grew up, probably in the 90 percentile, above 90 percentile, and economically disadvantaged, which does drive my passion that we'll talk about. But went off to college and wanted to do both the extracurricular coaching piece along with teaching. Thought I would be in a classroom forever. And so I did that about 12 years, and then I had a principal say, listen, we need you to jump into administration. So I was kind of drug in. I wouldn't say kicking and screaming, but my principal was just very instrumental in recruiting me. He said, we start out influencing about 100 and nowadays about 130 kids in our classrooms. He said, I need you to impact more kids. And so I took the challenge, jumped into administration after teaching science for 12 years, then had the pleasure in working in administration and teaching for 20 years in my former school district. So I really, had a lot of consistency in my educational career, coming up from teacher through assistant principal, associate principal, assistant superintendent, and now enjoying my first opportunity as superintendent at Bay City ISD, where my wife's family is from. So that's extra special as far as education. Wrapped up a doctoral degree in curriculum and instruction. A lot of folks will have a different approach to their educational pathway. Mine is I've always enjoyed the classroom, always enjoyed the idea of being an instructional leader. So my doctoral studies at Texas A&M College Station were in curriculum and instruction versus, probably a little less traditional than your typical leadership pathway. But I'm all about instruction and really breaking the cycle of poverty coming out of Southwest Texas is a big passion of mine.
Wow. No, this is exciting. So you have the background, you got the experiences, and you have the education. And now it's just you're kind of leveling up in your career. So excited to see kind of from the lens that you're seeing things, because we have guests on here from all different backgrounds and different tenures as superintendent. And so this is exciting. Corinne, is there something you wanted to say?
Oh, well, I think that do we just need to get out of the way that he mentioned A&M? I mean, that's just because just we might as well. Right?
I wasn't going to mention it, but now that you brought it up, Giggle Maggies.
Giggle, I see your background there. You've got your degree
know.
in the background. I've got my Aggie sign here in the background as well. My degree is a little off camera, but yeah, it's hard to avoid that conversation when you've been at Texas A&M College Station, that's for sure.
Well, now
Yeah,
that
we're just gonna do it because, well, go ahead, Gary. I'll come back in a second.
well, Corinne teed it up. I know we're planning on talking about something else today, but we can just talk about Aggies the whole time. So
No, so here's why, because I am also working on my doctorate. I'm going to a university and I'm most of it's in ed policy. So you're right.
Yes.
Your curriculum instruction, that pathway is different, but we have to go ahead and say it because I sit here with my 3 different degrees almost. I'm all but dissertation. So ABD.
Oh, congratulations on
I
that.
know, but none of them are from A&M. So clearly I have to do something else. So you might, someday we'll share cell phone numbers. You can let me know like what I need to do after, like postdoc work, maybe at A&M, so I can finally be part of this club.
There you go.
Definitely a breakthrough. Right. Corinne's having a breakthrough right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No one in my family is going to be okay with me going back to school after I finish my doctorate, but I'll do it for Gary so I can be part of this club with you. So you mentioned something that was almost always my first question about, did you know that you wanted to be a superintendent, early on? And I think you kind of answered that, but I want you to go deeper into that if you don't mind. Because I think pathways are important. When you're about to talk about later, we can talk about pathways and what's next for students and how they can tap into the best resources for their path. But you mentioned someone, I think what's called tapping, like they tapped you and said, I noticed you.
Yes. Can
you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think really, and really talking about leadership, and when I visit with folks about leadership, and I've done a couple of conferences on leadership topics, it's that whole idea of leaders are identified when they're, and Dr. Maxwell speaks about this in the 360-degree leader. Leading is not positional. Leading is something you can do for any position that you're in. And if you're a 360-degree leader, you're leading from the classroom, you're leading from the sponsoring of programs, you're being a great leader from the vice principalship. And that great leadership is, you're always taking on more than the job description suggests. You're always looking to grow and to expand your influence and helping students more. And so as I did that, volunteering for committees, extracurricular activities, as I mentioned to you, I think that was just the natural attributes that kind of got the attention of my supervisors that said, this seems like a person who, wants to do more. And the fact of the matter was that, just like you said, I did not have any plans to be a superintendent or a vice principal. I just loved doing more and doing as much as I could with my kiddos. And so it was just a natural thing. And I always tell folks that, I say, if you want a future in leadership, your audition, so to speak, is every day. Even when you don't think that you are auditioning, you are. And that's through your actions. And so being involved and going the extra mile, even in the hiring that I do and the mentoring that I do and bringing along future leaders, it's always kind of that natural characteristics, attributes. They're already doing more than the job description asks. And that's true for a lot of people in Texas. A lot of educators, they work super hard. That's for sure.
Well, when I looked at your website and your letter, like so many times superintendents, they talk about their background and their skills and all this, and you like lay out the things that you want to do. Like, I love that you're telling, like, that's a little bit different. So talk about, what are some of the things that you want to do with your students and that you're doing at Bay City?
Sure. And I'm really glad you noticed that, because that was very purposeful, in that I know the same thing. You get on the website and it's a lot about your background, your education, which is important because that's a motivational and an encouragement piece in itself. But what I always talk about is, I refer to it as, and I've done this for many years, even in my former district, the building and cultivating, if you will, this culture of excellence. And for me, that's in 3 areas. Of course, we're going to talk about the exemplary academics and providing some of the things that we'll talk about in the way of preparing the life-ready graduate for that next step, be it an industry-based certification or early college, high school, dual credit, those sorts of things on the academics. We want to break that cycle of poverty, which is kind of the umbrella for the whole thing that I told you was my passion. But the second leg, if you will, of that stool is the extracurricular. Students need to be, we talk about student engagement. We do a walkthrough in a classroom and we say, were the students engaged? Well, we kind of turn that around and we say, is the school engaged with the student? Are we providing those additional opportunities for them to explore their affinities, to explore their interests? And so very big on clubs, organizations, opportunities for extracurricular participation. And the final piece would be, or the final leg of the stool would be exemplary character and that citizenship that we want to reinforce. And we reinforce on a weekly basis, our students of the week, our teachers of the week, but really with our students, it's about that model citizenship that we're looking for, in that we're proud of your academics, we're proud of your extracurricular, but what are we doing to give back? Community service, days of service, these types of things, to where we're getting opportunities to give back and see how that develops character. Because we know, look, it is going to help with the whole piece on college applications, securing financial aid and scholarship, but what it does for you personally in that culture of excellence and how it develops that life-ready graduate is what we're really after. It's just not the academics pieces. I think that is what I would stress most. And there are some particular approaches that we're doing. And there was no accident that I applied for the superintendent's job at Bay City ISD. That is because they already had in place early college high school. As a matter of fact, this year, we are celebrating our first 2 associate's degree graduates. And we have a pipeline right behind that. The cohorts
Congratulations.
are bigger. So that's a huge piece for us, and all of our students seeing, wow, this is not only by name an early college high school, but they can see and we can promote these students who have stayed the course and finished. And so I think it's only on the way up from here. And I must mention how we're able to do that. We're in a time where recruiting teachers is so difficult. And here in our district, approximately 3,500 students. And so that's not a gigantic school district, yet we have 9 staff members who are adjunct professors. And so a lot of that is a part of your culture where we do grow your own in the area of bringing paraprofessionals into the teaching profession, as well as taking those that are already in the teaching profession and helping them become adjunct professors, boosting their resumes, all that. It's just good for everybody. It's good for kids, but it's good for staff as well.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm thinking. Like, I mean, the fact that it's right there, front and center on your page, the space where you have whatever, whatever you want to put on that page, you could put, and the fact that you take that space to talk about, I noticed that right away, the adjunct professors. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to go look more about that. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's the way to go in so many ways. You're going to have educators right there on your buildings who are capable of doing that and want to. So making a pathway for them is also important. So kudos. I mean, that's exciting.
Thank you very much. We're very proud of that. And again, it's showing our community, because we're not a big city either. Our students are able to see that, that paraprofessional that's been working with them, or that they knew, now they're a degreed individual who values education and is progressing. And that's a good thing. And like you said, the same thing with a teacher that already has their bachelor's degree, taking that next step to get a master's degree in the area of concentration that they're going to teach for college is phenomenal for motivational purposes.
It is. I mean, I could talk about that all day. I work at a university, and my entire role is creating pathways for students and connecting the dots between K-12 and higher ed. But I think we're missing something, and we're not doing that for the adults in the system also. And so kudos to you. Like, that is just impressive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, love it. I mean, what you're talking about, if I'm understanding correctly, it's like that, what's that phrase? People care about you when they know you care, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's shining through. So that's exciting. I'm kind of curious though. So, and by the way, those listening, we don't prepare these questions. These are just kind of random
We
questions.
don't. Our guests have no idea what we're going to ask, and our audience.
Thank you for the
loves it.
disclaimer. Thank you for that. Absolutely.
Yes. No. So no, I'm excited about what you have going, and I'm especially excited about kind of where your heart is based on what you just described. And so it's not really about you at all. It's about the students. It's about the district, and so that definitely shows a level of humility and where your focus is. So preparing life-ready graduates, right? And so we hear all the time some of the different things happening in districts. And one thing I never saw, and maybe it's a change that's happening in districts around Texas, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's an opportunity, right? So I went the traditional college route. Went to work for a corporation right out of college, and I never knew anything about entrepreneurship, right? Like starting businesses and that sort of thing. Is that a focus at all with districts, or is that on y'all's radar at all? Or
It is, and and we have I want to mention kind of the global umbrella that covers this part of our conversation, in that, I don't think there is a more valuable piece than what our legislators are supporting us with in the area of career and technical education. And with career and technical education, that is that additional pathway, if you will. It may not be college, but it may be. I can tell you from my own two sons, they went through high school and got several industry-based certifications in the way of career and technical education, went on to college and went that pathway. So they definitely had a vocational track and ended up going to college and graduating. But with the entrepreneurship, I got to tell you, just recently in the last week, we have a specific class geared for that, where in our entrepreneur class, we partner our students. And this year we had a great presentation from junior level and senior level participation, where students are paired with mentors in business, in real life situations, in the entrepreneurship, if you will, and they mentor them through the course, and they talk about areas of interest, and it culminates. And we just finished this up with the students coming in to kind of if you've seen on television, the whole Shark Tank type of atmosphere.
wow.
We invite our local business leaders. We invite the mentors who have brought them through this coursework and this pathway of entrepreneurship. They make their pitch, and we had some great pitches. I got to tell you, even after the presentation, we were in an auditorium, and I went down there, and one of the students had me so motivated, I had to share with her some ideas in addition to the pitch that she made for a business. And so they go through everything from marketing to budgeting, essentially launching a business. And
That is so
they
cool.
are, yes, and they're right in front of this panel of sharks, if you will, very friendly sharks, I guess, if there's such a thing, very supportive. And so they make their pitch, and at the end of it, and certainly in this year's case, this was the first year that we went all the way through it with the Shark Tank presentations. Our presenters were, they received awards for launching their companies, and they're gonna run these companies while in college. And so they had to be able to justify that. Some of the panel, I mean, it was very specific. The panel said, how are you going to do this in college? How are you going to do this? They'd ask the student, where are you going to college? Will this go with you? And just the creativeness and the real world applications to this were huge. And I think everyone in the room, from the panel to the mentors, the students, and of course myself, you automatically start to say, I know how we can make this better next year. This is phenomenal. We just make it more and more rich in the idea of true real world presentation and preparing them to be life ready at that next step. And I think that is something that in my almost 30 years in education, very unique. I don't think a lot of school districts are doing that. And I think it's just such a valuable tool for them. We talk about soft skills. When we do career and technology education, I talk to, in our area, a lot of different forms of industry, mostly relating to power and energy. And when I talk to those business leaders, which is a big part of what I do, how are we going to prepare these life-ready graduates? You know, I'm asking them, what do they need? We've got these industry-based certifications. What is it that maybe you're looking for particularly? And the main thing they say is, you know, it's really the soft skills. It's a quality resume. It's being able to interview very well. And so we have really embraced this in our entrepreneur program and giving those students opportunities to get that feeling before they ever leave us. So when they have those real opportunities, they're much more relaxed and able to do that.
I don't think we've ever said this on our podcast before, but I'm going to say it. Maybe, are you looking to hire? Because Gary and I might want to come work for you.
We are.
I think
we are. We love recruiting.
Yeah, he would love to teach that class. I mean, I think the thing that is so impressive to me is that over the last 2 years, we've been putting this podcast together for 2 years. And I think over the last 2 years, we've talked about things like, how are we going to manage with Chat GPT? Even though we didn't go deep into it, it's like a question, like why is public ed so important? Why is a classroom instruction so important? Why is a teacher so important? Why is a mentor so important? And you just answered something that I feel like has been something that we've been trying to get to for a while, is that students still need to get up in front of someone, pitch their idea, but they need to be able to see it in action, and they need to be able to stick with it a little longer than just like something on one assignment. So to me, you've done something that we've been trying to like put out the right answer. Gary, do you feel like that? Do you feel like that?
I feel like it covers so many different bottlenecks, if you will. And so, I mean, if you think about it, for some people are just built to start businesses, in my opinion, right? So, and I mean, some of the people I follow in the industry that have started companies that, you know, they have ADHD, they have, you know, these, and they've built these hundreds of millions of dollar companies, and they're not really, and this is not scientific, this is kind of anecdotal information that I've picked up.
It's a safe space, Gary. It's a safe space.
They're not really made to sit in a chair all day and look at a chalkboard, you know.
Absolutely.
Or dry erase board these days, right? So it kind of solves that niche or need, whatever you want to call it. And then statistically speaking, I don't remember what the number is, but baby boomers, they're exiting the workforce at astronomical rates, and they own these companies, right? And so
exactly,
a lot of opportunities there. And then as far as the community goes, when people graduate, they don't have to go off to Houston or wherever to go work for a corporation. They can start a company and provide for their families right there in Bay City. So, and it's outside the box. You hear some of the naysayers against public education, right? They kind of try to put public education in a box. And there's some really great things happening, and this is a perfect example of it. So you can't say anymore that, hey, you know, entrepreneurs it doesn't fit that mold, you know, public ed doesn't fit that mold. I mean, you guys, man, I'd be shouting from the rooftops what y'all are doing. That's exciting.
I know. You need to prove, I don't know if y'all, just like a side note, but if you aren't presenting at that, like at SLI or Costa Tasby, like people need to know. I mean, that's it. To me, I think I used to be a trustee for 10 years. And I would go to Costa Tasby or governance or Costa, you know, midwinter, and you'd hear ideas. And sometimes you, as a trustee, you take them back to your superintendent. You're like, this is going to cause more of a heartache and a nightmare to him or her than, you know, but some of those ideas aren't going to, they're not going to be very high cost. They could be a low cost, high impact event.
Yes. And you know, really, when you mention that, the buy-in from your community, where you have these individuals say, wait a minute, I'm a business owner here in the school district, you know, the school district community, and I get to engage and I get to work with students. I get to mentor students. Yet the buy-in is another community buy-in, another huge piece to this, because I think that was special in getting to see the level of involvement that we're getting from our community.
I'm freaking out. I can't wait to go look more at your district. So I want to ask this. You were going to talk to a superintendent in a really small district, and they were going to try to do something like this. And maybe they would take a little while to get buy-in. is the mentoring, was that one of the first steps, like in that entrepreneurship class, like the little mentor, and then you could maybe add into that Shark Tank idea? Where would be like a first place to start?
Yes, and so and I could get some more detailed information on this, but this really was a grassroots approach. This is where listening to your community is so important. And so our community development leaders were the driving force behind it. And so then it becomes this matter of how can we bring this into the school district? And so there was actually, some additional, when you do this look, when you do the search, of some additional funding available for curriculum. And so I think in our case, it was absolutely grassroots, as in the community wants more of this, and the discussion starts, and then you start looking for funding, and you start looking for the curriculum piece. And we have a very active local chamber as well, our Chamber of Commerce. They were partnered. So along with community development organizations, Chamber of Commerce, and really just bringing in those folks who it's already in their wheelhouse. And then so we didn't have to do a whole lot of searching, because it was a natural part of the conversation where they're working on community development as well as supporting and promoting our businesses. So it really was very natural in being able to come up with these mentors who were in the various fields where our students had an interest, particularly in business in this case, to match them up. And so I think that was a special part of it as well.
I love what you just said. I mean, the community has to be behind it. Maybe if they are not, maybe then it's your job and your A team's job to show why your students need something like that. But I usually ask, I know we're running short on time, and I usually ask a question at the end about, what you're reading or what you're doing, but I think I'm going to change and give a challenge to you.
Okay. I love a
should
challenge. I love it.
I think your
You've
team
already
or
got
your
me.
board, I think y'all should present, like, this is so important. I used to teach a session on like what's really ready, like, and we look at the Superintendent Association study on like what's college ready, what does it really look like? And that was like 10 years ago I started doing that presentation, and I've 8 years working in higher ed, and I'm telling you what I see the students need when they're in higher ed. It's great that they have a 4.0, great, but can you talk to me? Can you tell me what you want to do? Can you do more than be on your phone all day?
Yes,
do you know anything? Like, because if you tell me, you just because you took a test doesn't mean you know it. What do you know, and how can you help?
Exactly.
So y'all are doing that. I think you should talk about it. So I'll send you an email when the next sessions are open, but I think it would be midwinter.
Well, I'm telling you 100% challenge accepted, number one. And on two fronts. I'll tell you, in my former district, I said I was there 20 years, and I'm so excited to be here as superintendent. And, I've done several state level presentations in the past. And you know what? We have, obviously, this being my first year, we haven't done it here. So challenge accepted. And what a great opportunity to showcase what's going on in this district that I've joined, and has so many great things going for it. So absolutely, challenge accepted. I'm all in. So yes, look forward to you sharing that with me, because we will fill out the form. That's for sure.
That's awesome. That's I was thinking about it. The other thing I really like what y'all are doing is, I know everybody on this podcast right now probably reads a lot, does some continuing education, obviously with your doctorate. And if you don't apply it right away, you forget it. And I like how y'all are doing some application, because I know when I was in school, you take the finals, and the next year you're like, I don't remember that. I don't.
Exactly.
I don't remember.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, getting back into what we talked about early on with the culture of excellence, making the academics part of the interest of the student, and engaging the student in that, this is academics. Yes, it is. It's just an area that you're super interested in, and you're having all this fun, literally fun, developing your business model, developing your ideas. But this is what it's all about. There are so many different classes that you will take as a high school student, and if you choose college, but really it all gets down to finding your area of interest and then applying that knowledge. And I just think it's been a really fun journey for everyone involved. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. That alignment of strengths and passion coming together. Very exciting. Okay. Well, I know we're running short on time. And so last question, real quick question. If you were to have If you were to have somebody you know in public ed come on the podcast, who would you recommend?
Wow, someone in public education, there would be a few. I know that there are some very special things going on in my former district over there with Medina Valley. One person that I would recommend is the high school principal at Medina Valley High School. Tanner Lange is doing some very special things there, a little bit larger district. And so, but he's another one of those individuals who the consistency there, he's been there about 20 years. So they have really framed out some very special out of the box type things. And when you have the level of consistency with someone like that, you really get some special and innovative things.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely reach out. Well, thank you for being on the podcast today. And for those of y'all been tuning in, we're just going to give a shout out to our sponsor one more time. Ideal Impact is giving hundreds of millions of dollars in funding to public ed around the great state of Texas, 190 districts, over 190 districts, over 700 million given, unrestricted funds, zero out of pocket, and recurring revenue to the district every year. So if your district needs funding to do maybe some of the initiatives we talked about today, reach out to Ideal Impact and stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.